This is a solar wax extractor, which I use to warm honey and remove it from the combs cut from frames. It is much cheaper than a rotating honey extractor. Here I am breaking up the combs to help the honey run out. The sun warms the honey and eventually melts the wax. Be careful not to let the honey overheat. The wax should be allowed to melt only when most of the honey is run out. There you have the honey running out through a sieve and into a container. This glass lid increases the heat in the extractor and of course keeps bees out. I also use the wax extractor as an uncapping tray when processing honey for spinning out in an extractor. It holds 10 super frames. In order to extract the honey out of the combs, we first have to remove the wax capping which the bees have placed over the honey once it is ripe and ready to store, and that wax capping has to be removed prior to putting the frame into the extractor. There are several ways of doing this. There are knives like this which are heated in a container of water, wiped dry, and then the cappings are removed with this knife. Very heavy in order to retain the heat. I have here an electric uncapping knife which works pretty well. I haven't had a big problem with it. You just got to be careful that you don't overheat it and you set the thermostat at as low a temperature as possible. Right, you'll see I've got a frame across the wax extractor with a nail through it on which I place the frame. And first of all I cut a small piece of the wax off like that. Then with this cutting action I'll take the rest of the wax off. Little pieces can be nipped out with the corner of the knife. Take the burr comb off the top and the bottom and then do the other side. That's it. Take it, I can leave it there or I can put it straight into the extractor. Do another one, little bottom cut, give you somewhere for the knife to work, and a nice sawing action, not too fast, gently up the comb like that. Burr comb off front and back, and do the other side. You probably noticed that this comb was not completely capped over, but as long as it's 75% capped, I believe that it is okay to take the honey. We also require, of course, an extractor. In this case, it's a hand-operated extractor which takes 6 frames. It is called a tangential extractor, and the one problem with this is the frames have to be turned over twice during the extracting operation. Because only one side of the comb is emptied at a time, and the weight pushing from behind breaks the combs, slow revolutions are needed until the bulk of the honey is removed from both sides. Now on this side we can do slow and fast speeds. So we do it slowly first of all to get the majority of the honey out for a few minutes. See the honey flying onto the edges of the machine. After the slow turning, we can then increase the speed to remove the rest of the honey. During this extracting process, the honey picks up air in little bubbles and they settle in the honey, and you have to strain the honey and then settle it for a few days before bottling to allow these tiny little bubbles to come to the surface. Also, small particles of wax also collect on the surface of the container, and these have to be removed prior to bottling. The main requirement in bottling is to have suitable containers, and they must be fitted with a honey gate, which is this apparatus here, and all it is actually a quick cut-off tap. I hold the bottle at a slight angle to allow the honey to run down the side of the bottle to trap as few air bubbles as possible. This honey I've warmed very slightly just to make it run a little bit easier. The honey is warmed on any heat source, but up to just above warm. If you overheat the honey, you're going to destroy the enzymes and a lot of the goodness of the honey. As honey readily absorbs moisture from the air, and it is very important to keep honey that is settling covered either with some cling wrap or stretch film or with a tight-fitting lid. If you do not do so, the honey will absorb moisture from the air and become very runny, and in some cases, if it absorbs a lot of moisture, it could even ferment. A nice label will help sell your honey. Check the regulations in your country if you plan to sell commercially. To sum up then, I've shown you many aspects of simple beekeeping. Remember, bees will repay any attention you give them with interest. So manage them well and they will reward you well.